Hey everybody, it's the Honky Tonk Happy Hour coming to you live from the Burger Shack. And up next on the show, this guy, what can we say about him? He's been a Houston institution for a long time. He's a lawyer and an entertainer and a songwriter, and he's done a lot of wild stuff around this town, and we're going to talk a lot about it. Please welcome to Honky Tonk Happy Hour. This is Mr. Al Staehely. Al, how's it going? Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for asking me to be here.
I've heard about you and known about you, and it's a good time to sit down and talk to you about your career and so forth. Everybody talks to you in interviews, I'm sure, about your time with Spirit.
Right.
And that was a big rock and roll part of your career. What I'd like to talk about today is Al Staehely, the songwriter, today.
What's happening in the fall is Steady Boy Records wants to re-release a solo album I did, came out only in Europe on Polydor in 1982. And it was only ever released in Europe, and it was only released on vinyl because that was the year before CDs came out. In fact, the first time I ever saw a CD was in Hamburg, Germany, up at Deutsche Grammophon. And this guy brought this little silver disc up and said, "See this?
Right.
This is going to be the next big thing." And I'd never seen one before. And it was that next year that they started coming out. So at any rate, this will be the first time that album's ever been released outside of Europe and the first time on CD anywhere. And include a few bonus tracks. And so this is something that Freddie wanted to do, Steady Boy, and so that's going to be in the fall.
And that one was called Staehely's Comet, originally.
Yeah, originally, and I think it's going to be retitled for this release. And
You've had some of your songs covered by big people. I have a couple of names that came to mind I thought were really bizarre, and a bizarre dichotomy where Keith Moon covered one of your songs.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, which did you know Keith Moon, or did you just get a phone call one day from somebody?
I'll tell you how that happened. This was after Spirit broke up, but JoJo Gunn, a couple of the guys that left Spirit
started
JoJo
band.
Gunn,
right.
And I was in one of their recording sessions, and John Stronach, who was their recording engineer, happened to mention that he was getting ready to start a Keith Moon album. And I said, "Well, who's producing?" And he said, "Mal Evans." I said, "Mal Evans, the Beatles roadie?" If you remember
okay.
those,
I wouldn't have got. That's a deep reference.
Well,
there,
it's
Mal
not
Evans.
It's
Write
not
that down,
deep.
kids.
I mean, if you remember the Beatle movies, you remember seeing this big guy with kind of long blonde hair and Buddy Holly kind of glasses running around doing that. That was Mal
That's Mal Evans. Okay.
And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Where are you doing?" He said, "The record plant." This was in L.A.
Right.
He said, I said, "Well, I got some songs. Maybe if they don't have all the songs." He said, "Well, come on by the record plant on Wednesday. I'll introduce you to Mal." So I go by, and I wrote one song specially for the occasion that I thought might be good. And then I had this other song called Crazy Like a Fox that I'd already written, but I brought those two songs, I think just guitar vocal demos.
Right.
Played the one that I'd specially written for the occasion. Mal said, "I don't know, what else you got?" I played him the song Crazy Like a Fox. This was Wednesday. He said, "I could see Keith doing that. We'll cut it on Friday." And I said, "This is the way the song plugging should always be," and it never has been before or since. But
so it was Mal Evans, you said?
Evans.
Mal Evans. Nice.
So I said, "Well, do you have all the musicians for the session lined up?" He said, "Well, no, not yet." I said, "Well, of course I know the song because I wrote it, but also my brother," and by this time my brother was playing in JoJo Gunn towards the end of their career. I said, "My brother knows it because he's played it with me." And he said, "Well, why don't we get all of JoJo Gunn to play on it?" I said, "Okay." So I call up, "Hey guys, would you like to play a Keith Moon session on Friday?" Yes.
Nice.
So we show up at the session on Friday.
At the record plant?
At the record plant. Okay. And besides me and JoJo Gunn, here was the configuration. Keith on a drum set, Curly Smith on drums, who was JoJo Gunn.
Right.
JoJo Gunn's bass player, Jimmy Randall at the time, Jay Ferguson on piano, my brother on electric. Also Jesse Ed Davis on electric, they called him in. Me on acoustic 6-string, and Spencer Davis on acoustic 12-string.
Davis, okay.
Which Mal had called those two guys in. And that's the way they cut the basic track. They wanted to cut the basic track like that. And so the one you hear on the record was done like that. 2 drummers, 4 guitar players.
That's great, just a big old studio full of guys
And
jamming. Was it cut live?
It was cut live, and I think my brother overdubbed the solo, but I'm not even sure of that now to think about it. And then I got out with Keith, I had the lyrics written out, put on the music stand,
Right.
and to kind of cue him in because
He didn't really know the song.
I mean, he just heard the song
once or
best
twice
2 days ago.
Right.
And so here's Keith out there with a bottle of Cavassier in one hand, and I'm sitting there cueing him on the lyrics, and he's saying, "Stand back! You got to give the girl room. She's crazy like a fox, and that fox got." And it was a lot of fun, and they started calling me back for sessions, so I ended up playing on about half of the Keith Moon solo album, and met Ringo. Ringo came down one day to a session, and that's where I met Bobby Keys. And
that's cool.
And another good moment was one time on one of the days we were recording. In those days when you had the tape, they had from time to time change tape.
Right.
So engineer had changed tape, but we already had our headphone mixes, and we were sitting there, and I was on acoustic guitar in my little isolation booth, but I just started going ding 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 ding. All of a sudden Keith Moon comes in. All of a sudden I'm playing My Generation with Keith Moon on it.
In a little nice little headphone mix.
Yeah, with a perfect headphone mix.
Nice.
Okay, this is